Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have the latest from the live radar, run through the weather warnings as we still have numerous weather warnings issued as we start to see storm Bert clearing away through the rest of today. Still some rain and wind warnings, especially in the south and the west, where we have got the cold front slowly clearing through this evening. We'll have a look at the latest UK view, have a look at the precipitation and the temperature over the coming days, as we are going to see a lot less disruptive weather this upcoming week. But it is going to be still fairly changeable. There will be days where it's average to above average temperatures, but there equally will be a couple of days during the middle of the week where it'll be much colder, with the risk of overnight frosts. Now, as we head into early December, which of course is coming around in only a week's time, there is still massive uncertainty over what we are going to see. At the moment, I think especially the first few days of December are likely to continue to be fairly changeable, with the risk of cold weather potentially in the north, maybe a bit of snow, but equally some wet and windy weather, especially further southwards. It does look like the jet stream will be fairly active, but there still will be blocking areas of high pressure trying to force colder air our way. What one of those scenarios wins out eventually, we do not know for sure, but definitely all to play for, especially in that period leading up towards Christmas. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, which do like and subscribe, and remember to follow me on Twitter as well, the link's in the description. Now, if you start on the live radar, we are seeing storm Bert clearing through today, but we have got the back edge still to deal with. The warm front, which gave all the heavy rain, snow yesterday, is now across Norway, where you can see snow and rain is impacting Scandinavia. The centre of the low is now to the north of Scotland. You can see this with the spiralling area of heavy showers. Again, the radars don't quite get too far out, so it's not picking up on all the rain, but you can see there is quite a few heavy showers around. And then further southwards, we've got the cold front sweeping through. This is where we've got cold air coming in with a northwesterly flow behind the warm sector, which we saw moving through yesterday, which is why temperatures in places got up towards 15 degrees or so. Now, this cold front is fairly active. You can see some line convection within it, and just generally some heavier rain. It is slowly moving eastwards, with the rain fairly stationary at the moment, but it should clear the far southeast corner around midnight to the early hours of Monday morning. So still many hours of rain to come in these areas, and where this cold front does sit, it will dump quite a lot of rain, and that's why we still have rain warnings issued. Now, on the southern flank of this system, we still got very strong winds, and we're seeing sort of resurgence of the winds today. Again, very gusty in places, 50, 60 miles per hour quite widely, potentially 70 miles per hour towards coastal regions. Now, we can see this is a cold front by looking at the temperatures. Look at across eastern England, still up toward the mid-teens, but the further northwards and westwards you go, it is turning cooler. Now, it isn't particularly cold across Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland, Wales and southwest England, but it is cooler, and that temperature contrast is fueling that rain that we're seeing moving eastwards at the moment. And that sort of cooler, colder air is going to be sort of air mass we see for much of this upcoming working week. If we do also put on the past 24-hour precipitation, we can see that we've seen a lot of rain, especially in those western regions, and really exactly where we've got the warnings. So you can see why those warnings were put into force. Many areas seeing at least an inch or 2 or even 3 inches of rainfall in some spots. If you also put on the latest wind speeds, remember these are not the wind gusts, but you can see the wind speeds are very strong, especially along the cold front and ahead of it. Behind it, we've got a slight lull where the winds die down a bit, and then still fairly strong further northwards towards the centre of the system. So variable winds today, but you can see, especially in the southern and eastern areas at the moment, still very strong. Now, if you look at the weather warnings, you can see we've got numerous warnings still issued. If we do start further southwards, we've got this widespread yellow wind warning that goes into force, or went into force this morning, and expires at 9 p.m. Again, we're looking at medium likelihood, low impact, and we're looking at 45 to 55 widely, 60 to 65 in a few spots. And that's exactly where we've got those stronger wind speeds at the moment, as we just saw from the live radar, that eastern sector. We've got this other yellow wind warning that is issued for the far southwest, and again it expires at 9 p.m. this evening, and this is sort of covering southwest England towards the far south coast, and we're looking at slightly stronger winds here, 70 to 75, and again that's expected along coastal regions, and it's a medium impact, very low likelihood. So Less likelihood of it actually occurring, but the impacts could be larger. And from the looks of what I can see outside at the moment, it does look really quite lively. And I'm fairly inland, so yeah, I can't imagine what it's like towards the coasts at the moment. And then we've got these two larger rain warnings, and again, it's for the cold front, which is fairly stationary at the moment, slowly moving eastwards, but really only at a few miles an hour. You can see it's 50 to 75 millimetres, maybe 100 to 150, and that's on top of what we've already seen. And you can see it expires later this evening at 11:45. And again, we got this warning issued for South Wales, and this expires very shortly, actually, as I'm recording this. And again, it's for another 25 to 40 millimetres of rain. And as we saw on the live radar, the cold front is clearing Wales at the moment, and it's now stuck across central and southern parts of England. Now, to transition further northwards, we've got two more wind warnings for Northern Ireland, again expiring at 6 p.m, but we're looking at, again, very similar, 45 to 55 miles per hour. And this other warning across western Scotland, and again, it expires at midnight, again, looking at sort of 60 to 70 quite widely, maybe up to 75 in a few spots. So the impacts are starting to wind down. We have got fewer warnings now, but nevertheless, we still are going to see some significant impacts until potentially midnight tonight, and for maybe in the far southeast, rain continuing into the early hours of the morning. Remember, even areas where we don't have active warnings at the moment, and where not too much is actually coming out of the sky, we still are seeing impacts from flooding as river levels do continue to rise. About 24 to 48 hours after a rainfall event, they do peak. So at the moment, we're still seeing flooding even for northern and western areas where the rain has largely stopped, and that's just because those river levels are rising. But through Monday, they should start to drop widely. And so hopefully by sort of Monday evening, all impacts have subsided. Now, if you look at the latest UKV, you'll be able to see that we're not expecting too much in the way of impactful weather this upcoming week. But there'll still be areas of rain around, maybe even a bit of snow for northern Scotland, and some colder temperatures. Now, if you look at the precipitation, that cold front slowly clearing this evening, but you see it takes a very long time to do so, and really only by the early hours of Monday does it fully clear. Into Monday, it's a day of sunshine and showers with that northwesterly flow, slightly colder air pushing in, so again, some snow showers across the Highlands of Scotland, but for most it is rain with some sunshine peeking through. As we clear into Tuesday, we do see cooler northerly winds coming in, so it is quite a cold day on Tuesday, but plenty of sunshine, so it'll be fairly pleasant. We have got this sliding low in southern areas, and again, this looks like a primed snow event, but we're not seeing any snow from this because that air mass in the north that is pushing southwards isn't quite cold enough. If this same event occurred this point last week, then we would definitely be looking at some quite heavy snow here, but because of the nature of this system with the colder air pushing in, but it's not quite Arctic air, it's more polar maritime air, it means that it's less likely to be snow. More likely though to be cold rain, still feel miserable, still feel like 3 or 4 degrees, just not the white stuff coming out of the sky. As we move into Wednesday, it's another chilly day, but eventually into Thursday and Friday, we start to see another warm sector moving in from the southwest, introducing some rain potentially into the weekend. Now, if you do look at the upper air temperature, you can see it is going slightly cooler over the coming hours. Eventually, some colder polar maritime air moves in. And you can see it is chilly air, but it's not as cold as it was last week, or at least for most, it's not as cold. Maybe northern Scotland getting out to -6, -7. That's kind of snow-worthy air, but most other areas, it's below average. It's chilly, but nothing too exceptional. As we head in towards Wednesday and Thursday, eventually all that cold air gets pushed away once again, and we do go a little bit milder. Do look at the wind gusts at the moment, you can see they are really peaking through this afternoon, 50, 60, but by the evening they will have died down. So the winds look like they're going to subside a bit quicker than the rainfall by midnight, really. I'm not expecting much in the way of wind gusts in the south. The north still 50 to 60 all the way through into Monday. Do look at the max temperatures, see this afternoon, the far east, 16 degrees, where we've got that milder sector. Most other areas only high single digits with that colder air pushing back in. Now into Monday, it's going to be a much fresher day, widely kind of 5 to 8 degrees, maybe just about double digits in the far southeast, so getting back towards average or slightly below average. And you can see through Monday night, a frost in northern and western areas. And by the afternoon, again, it's another chilly day, 6 to 8 degrees. And by the evening, it actually turns really quite cold indeed. A frost for many areas from kind of the Midlands northwards, but it's really kind of a one-night event. And you can see by Wednesday, it is another cold day, widely around the low single digits, 5 or 6 further southwards. Again, it is a cold polar maritime air, just not quite as cold as last week, or cold enough for snow this time of year. and then into Thursday, and then another very cold night. So again, frosts further southwards here, so that looks like it's going to be the coldest night of the week. And by Thursday, still chilly, maybe mid to low single digits in quite a few spots, but it will be turning milder into Friday with that frost more confined to northern and eastern areas. There's a couple of days of cold weather coming this week, but not expecting any snow associated with it, just colder temperatures, especially overnight, some quite harsh frosts and colder temperatures in the day. It's kind of mid single digits or low single digits in some northern regions. So chilly conditions, but nothing too exceptional, of course. It is slightly milder than it was last week, where it was more towards 1 or 2 degrees during the day. And of course, we're not seeing any snow with this. So quite uneventful, but still a pretty little, small little cold snap during the middle of the week. Now, do look at the latest GFS. You can see Storm Bert clearing at the moment. You see those brief northerly winds coming in this week around this area of high pressure, and you can see why it does go chilly for a time. But you can see why, it's not a major cold spell or anything. There's a temporary little colder northerly wind for a couple of days under some higher pressure for eventually the southwesterly push in. Now, into the subsequent days, we actually see high pressure return towards Greenland, and look at this. It starts to set up quite a cold pattern, potentially northerly winds coming the first couple of days of December. And this is why I said there is the risk of some very cold weather at times. But the block isn't overpowering, and you can see the westerly flow does break through a couple of days later. So this is why I do think there is quite a high chance we see some wet and windy weather, mild weather, equally a couple of days of colder conditions. So very, very changeable. Now, into the extended range, it is a westerly flow at this point, but again, we've got high pressure ridging up towards Scandinavia, potentially trying to set up a Scandinavian high, and again, there is some cold air to our east, nothing too major, but would still be pretty chilly if we did tap into some of that. So again, it's going to be one to watch very, very closely, but for the time being, does look very changeable to end November and start December. Cold weather looks like it will return for a couple of days, but equally we'll see some mild, wet and windy conditions. Now, to compare to the GM, broadly very similar, brief northerly wind coming in this upcoming week, but eventually high pressure builds in for westerly flow does break through. We do have a chance of pushing in another northerly. Again, we've got this high towards Greenland, but it's not overpowering, and towards day 10 it's very similar to the GFS, where it's very, very changeable. We'll be oscillating between colder and milder sectors. And finally, if we finish on the latest ECMWF, Storm Bert is clearing through at the moment, that brief northerly coming in this week. And then eventually we do see high pressure building in, not quite pulling off that northerly, but getting a bit of an easterly in, which is pretty chilly, before eventually towards the extended range, a brief westerly bout with potentially stormy conditions, for eventually high pressure builds in once again, extending up towards Greenland, trying to build something a bit colder, but at this stage it's just more settled with southeasterly winds. It would be a bit of a chilly spell with those southeasterly winds. You can see overnight temperatures down towards the low single digits. If we do look at the dew points, getting down again close to freezing, because remember, we are heading into winter, so it does mean that even mild upper air temperatures under higher pressure with the wind coming off the near continent, it would be reasonably cold just because of an inversion taking place. Even though here it actually doesn't look particularly cold, it looks like a fairly mild pattern. Because it is December, it probably would be pretty chilly at the surface. Really, this time of year, especially December, January, the only real possibility to get mild weather is for a west or southwesterly wind. It's come quite common though. The last sort of 10 years or so, we've had that pretty overwhelmingly in a lot of our winters. But in reality, anything other than a sort of west to southwesterly wind can be, and normally is actually pretty chilly. Even a southerly wind coming in off France from the near continent, especially if there is cold air towards Europe, it normally is chilly. Not snow-worthy, but chilly with frost and fog. Now, to finish by looking at the latest ensemble, just refresh this as it is just coming out. You can see very changeable over the next week. Some colder air coming in at times this week, some very mild air coming in towards the end of the week. But then, as I said, towards early December and kind of that period leading up towards Christmas, there is massive uncertainty. There's cold runs and very cold runs, quite a few runs getting towards -10, but equally there's plenty of milder runs as well, with the upper air temperatures hovering around average. So I do think that definitely there is cold weather potentially into December, but I don't think it is massively heightened, maybe slightly more heightened than we've seen in the past 10 years or so. Of course, December 2022 was pretty cold. The start of December 2021 was pretty cold. We did see some chilly weather during 2023 as well. But, in quite a few of the last 10 years, we've had quite big westerly fests, especially into the lead up to Christmas. It doesn't look like we're seeing that at the moment, but equally it doesn't seem overwhelmingly cold either. It's very much on a knife edge. We could see colder weather, we could see milder weather. One could dominate, but at the moment I do think a very changeable pattern is the most likely. So again, if you're looking forward to some snow in the lead up to Christmas, I wouldn't be surprised if it came off. But a massive cold spell with massive northerly or easterly winds at the moment isn't, within the model output. It could occur, it could pop up. We are seeing it. Some of these colder runs here are very chilly, but, not overwhelming at this stage. Very, very changeable. And you can see from the 2 meter dew points, this gives a very strong indication of the sort of air mass. Anything 0 and below is coming in from the east or the north, and you can see quite a few runs there towards 0, but then equally quite a few runs 5 to 10, which would be a more of a west to southwesterly wind. Dew points do give us a very good idea on the sort of air mass we're seeing, because as I said, we can see upper air temperatures of 5 to 6 degrees coming in off the near continent, but actually it's pretty cold at the surface because it is coming in from the east. So dew points can give us another sort of point of reference when looking at these air masses, and again, longer term you can see it is exceptionally changeable as we head into early December. Now if you compare finally to the ECMWF, it's broadly very similar. Below average for a time this working week, for a couple of degrees below average during the middle of the week, and then it's above average, trending back towards average in the longer term. But equally, it is exceptionally changeable. Lots of up and down into the first week of December. Maybe not as much cold as the GFS was showing, but equally, we're not expecting the models to be exactly the same. So we'll have to wait and see what's coming up, but the one thing we can say is this upcoming week, there will be colder weather, there will be some pretty harsh overnight frosts, but we're not expecting anything near as disruptive as we have seen over the past week or so. We've seen lots of wind, rain, especially in the last couple of days, and heavy snow for quite a few last week. So anyway, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.